All right, we are live here. Dodgers Dogs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host tonight on this Monday afternoon edition of Dodgers Dogs. Trying something a little bit different today, just a little bit behind the scenes. I have some things that typically will go on Monday nights at here on East Coast, which, by the way, I'm in the state of Michigan. There's a lot of snow happening right now. If you're out in California, be grateful that you don't have to deal with all the snow that we're getting over here. There's something that I have going on Monday nights usually from about 6:30 to 7 o'clock until about 8:30. And so I rush to go home to do the show for you guys most Monday night evenings. I also don't want to compete with some other shows. I know a lot of you guys enjoy all the great Dodgers podcasts that are out right there. So what we're trying to do tonight is doing something a little bit different. We're going to be seeing how this time slot works. It is 2:15 Pacific. I actually just got out of work, which shout out to my day job. Really enjoy you guys out there. We're going to be trying this time slot, see how it goes, see the crowd that we're able to gather, and see what to do for these Monday night shows going forward. Still love being here with you guys, and we're going to have a great show tonight for each one of you guys that are able to join, or if you're able to join a little bit later, watching this a little bit on post-game, please let me know down in the comment section everything that we talked about tonight, or just some of your general thoughts. I really do enjoy the interaction with you guys. There's a lot of exciting stuff that is happening here on Dodgers Daily. A lot of different player interviews. Earlier today, Evan Shaw, that player interview was released. I know Casey was talking a lot about on the show yesterday all the different interviews that he is lining up with players within this organization. It is unique to get this type of access to the organization, to the people within the organization, to hear their stories, to hear about their pitch mixes, or to hear just different aspects about their game. It is really cool to be able to get that insight and be able to provide that for you guys. So highly recommend you guys go check out all of that stuff, all of the different player interviews that we have that have been released or that will be released coming up going forward. So just want to point that out just because that is something that is really cool, and I really enjoy watching those. And I know you guys, if you take the chance to be able to see that, to be able to get to know these players a little bit, I think you'll have more of an appreciation for this organization and more of a love for the game of baseball as a whole. So I want to point that out. Haven't been on since Wednesday after the Blake Snell signing, which I still really do enjoy. The Dodgers addressed their biggest area of need by going after and getting a Blake Snell. Thought it was great what they were able to do. Perhaps you are a little bit concerned about the years or the money that is attached to that. I think it was something that the Dodgers needed to do something to address the starting pitching, to add a little bit more depth, and especially at the high level of depth that they have, or just with the amount of injuries that they have, having another one of these guys that can go out there and be an ace level pitcher. Can't really have enough of those guys. The Dodgers were already going to be over the luxury tax threshold for this upcoming season, so I'm not too concerned about that. I enjoy the signing. I think Blake Snell is a really good pitcher, and I think if he wanted to, he could limit some of the walks. That's really been the main concern with Blake Snell, is his control. Well, a lot of that has to do with the type of pitcher that he profiles as. He's one of those guys that's going to dance around the zone and avoid the hard contact, which means that if he wanted to, he could throw more strikes, absolutely, but that would give up more damage, so he specifically chooses not to do that. So it's the type of style that he is. He's had a ton of success. I'm excited to see what he can do in Dodger Blue. On top of that, Casey and Coach, which shout out to Coach, really excited to see you, that you were on the show on Friday. They were able to go through and talk a little bit more in depth about the Tommy Edman extension. I have not had a chance to comment on that. I'm really excited that the Dodgers were able to get this deal done. If you were not aware, Tommy Edman signed an extension with the Los Angeles Dodgers, a 5-year, $74 million extension. I believe it's a I think it was a $15 million signing bonus. Don't quote me on that. There are some deferrals. I think about 33% of the contract is deferrals, which will impact what the money is as far as the luxury tax is concerned, which that's the main thing that I'm worried about, is how is this going to impact the luxury tax threshold, which Dodgers are going to go over. Still want to be concerned about that for years going forward. With Tommy Edman, you're getting a different style of player for this Dodgers team, a style player that is more of the bat-to-ball contact type of approach, that winning baseball type plays. But more importantly, and I think this is one of the main reasons why the Dodgers have loved a Tommy Edman, is he is incredibly positionally versatile, especially at positions of which the Dodgers could use some additional positional versatility. He can play center field. He can play shortstop. He also has played third base in the past. He can play second base at a really elite level. He can play corner outfields, which creates optionality for the Dodgers moving forward as far as their position players of what they could do going forward. One of the biggest things that the Dodgers covet is not just great players, not just great talent, but the ability to make certain moves. And with this roster, there are certain limitations as far as which moves the Dodgers could make because they have some elite players at certain positions. For example, they do not have the luxury that other teams have, that they have the designated hitter to be open to certain players. They have the better luxury of having the best hitter in the game of baseball, albeit with him taking over that designated hitter spot. Now, the Dodgers will make that trade every single time, but that limits what you can do on the field as far as taking or adding too many players that might be limited in their defensive ability. You can't hide them at the designated hitter spot. That's already taken by Shohei Ohtani. You also have first base covered for the next 3 seasons by Freddie Freeland in his contract, which I think with all Dodgers fans, they would agree, totally worth that trade-off. He's a great player. Love having him there. For other players that might be defensively limited, or to add some, especially like at the catcher position, some defensive versatility, they often can move them over to first base. That becomes a little bit limited. So with a player like a Tommy Edman, who can fill in different roles at different positions, especially positions that are of need to this Dodgers team, meaning basically anywhere in the outfield and anywhere around the diamond, third base, shortstop, and second base. All of those positions at this point in Tommy Edman's career, you feel comfortable with. And we've seen with this Dodgers team, they love having players that have the ability to cover different areas when there is an area of need, when there is a type of injury. Tommy Edman has the ability to do that, and he has the ability not just to play those positions, but he has a history of playing those positions at a high level. Now, you might have a little bit of concern about, okay, maybe his defensive metrics are shortstop or lesser than his defensive metrics at second base. That's probably true, but he still has the ability to be really solid at the shortstop position. I still feel incredibly confident at this point in Tommy Edman's career that he can go around and move around positionally and make a really big impact for this Dodgers team. Still hit at about a league average level, which, if you have players, especially with those contact-oriented type players, that might not have the ceiling of other power hitters as far as their ability to hit for high WRC pluses. There's a limited factor of what you're able to do if you don't hit for power. Not to say that Tommy Edman doesn't hit for power. His power is limited than other players. Even with that, if he can just hit for his contract at about a league average level, or maybe a little bit slightly above a league average level, that would be great. This is going to be absolutely worth it. 5 years, $74 million for Tommy Edman. This provides coverage for the Dodgers in center field and at the shortstop position, and allows them to seek after and make the moves that they particularly want to make, and that they will want to do and think will make this team better in the long run. They are not shoehorned into making certain moves or making moves out of desperation, because they have a player that can fill in that role and can be pretty solid at that. At some of Tommy Edman's best seasons, you're talking about a guy who can put up 3, 4, 5 WAR in a season for what he's able to do. I think if you get a full season of Tommy Edman in this clubhouse, knowing his role, knowing what he's going to do, he's going to move around quite a bit, and he's supposed to extend this lineup to the guys that are just amazing hitters at the top of this lineup, I think you can see some of the best of Tommy Edman. It's 5 years. It's taken him from his age 30 to 34 season. I believe there is also a club option for his age 35 season. That could be exercised by the Dodgers, similar to what they did with a Chris Taylor years back. Next year, Chris Taylor has a club option. At this point, unless he proves something during the course of the 2025 season, I'm not anticipating the Dodgers picking up that club option. But if he was still valuable during this season, perhaps you could see them moving forward with that. Similar thing with a Tommy Edman. If he's still providing an incredible amount of value for this Dodgers team, we've seen them pick up some of those club options, and especially with rising costs for free agents, that could be something that the Dodgers do. I don't think they're as worried about this. I think this allows them to either make or, and this is something that is incredibly undervalued when we're talking about free agency, to avoid certain moves. They do not have to make certain moves in free agency. They can make moves, but they don't have to be forced to be making moves if they are not in love with a particular player. And when we're talking about free agents, when we're talking about players that the Dodgers should target, I think this should be an approach that they go ahead and partake, especially when we're talking about a lot of different rumors, which I'll get to the comment section in just a minute, and then we'll get into some other players of where this could be impacted for this Dodgers team, for players that they target. I want them, especially if they're going to invest a lot of years and a lot of money, but particularly years, I want them to invest in players that they 100% believe in, not the players that just fill a positional need or a temporary need. I want to go for the star players. Like, for example, when years back, they didn't necessarily need a Freddie Freeman, but he became available, and he was such a great talent that the Dodgers were able to get him, and they added him to his roster, and they were able to kind of build around him and what he was able to do. I want the Dodgers to target the players, not that they like, but that they love. And I think that's what a Tommy Edman type of move allows the Dodgers to be able to do. Now, we can have different opinions on different players that the Dodgers should like or whether they should love going after that player. For example, this brings up the conversation of Willy Adames as shortstop. Is he a player that the Dodgers like, or is he a player that for the contract, for the years, and for the money that he's going to cost the Dodgers, is he a player that the Dodgers love? That's going to be the question for the Dodgers as far as whether they go out and acquire him. They do have some options now with Tommy Edman in-house to where they don't necessarily have to go after a Willy Adames. It would be nice. It would fill an area of need, but they don't have to make that move if it does not make sense for the team. And I think that is something that is great about this Tommy Edman signing. I would anticipate, especially the first couple of seasons, with him being able to move around for this Dodgers team, being positionally versatile. I think it's hard. It would be hard to see how he does not provide value. And if he's going out there, playing a lot of games, filling a lot of needs for this Dodgers team as they come up, I think that's going to be the best role for Tommy Edman. He is the next wave, the next replacement for the Chris Taylor and Kike Hernandez whenever they are not on this Dodgers team. He's that next wave of super utility player that this game is trending towards and that this Dodgers organization absolutely loves. I love the Tommy Edman signing. I'm excited about that. I was excited when the Dodgers went out and acquired him, and now I'm even more excited that another thing that was important for this Dodgers offseason, which if the Dodgers didn't make this move during this offseason or during the course of the regular season, he was scheduled to be a free agent after the 2025 season, in which case you don't have the luxury of having some coverage in the center field shortstop position. That presents a lot more questions for the upcoming free agency. Now you have that lockdown. Now another domino that seemed to be on the checklist of a lot of Dodgers fans of what they were hoping for, what they wanted during the course of the 2024-2025 MLB offseason for this Dodgers team. That's checked off. And now you turn the page to perhaps a Teoscar Hernandez, or filling in a corner outfield, or an outfielder with a lot of impact on his bat. Now you start to look into that conversation, and I think that is where everybody who's covering the Dodgers, everybody who's a fan of the Dodgers, would love to see the Dodgers turn to next, is to look into the outfield market and be able to attack that. Dodgers currently have 37 players on their 40-man roster. There is room to make additional moves. They also have players that will be added onto the 60-day injured list once spring training starts. So players like a Clayton Kershaw or maybe even a Kike Hernandez could be signed after spring training starts if they have some sort of backdoor deal. So you don't have to factor those players into the equation. Also, the Dodgers could make some trades, so there is still room to improve this Dodgers roster if the right things and the right scenarios come up. And I'm sure we'll get into Nolan Arenado, Carlos Correa, but I want to get into the comment section just right now, just to interact with you guys and thank you guys for being here. Dodgers Dogs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Gregory, thank you very much for joining us. What's up? Back to you. Sammy Boy Smith, we will get to this in just a minute or just a few minutes. Home of the brave and land of the free, and Freeland, our shortstop. We will get into Alex Freeland. I will be walking you guys through another tool that you guys can utilize on FanGraphs as far as evaluating players, as far as evaluating the talent that is Alex Freeland, and perhaps debunking some of the myths or some of the assumptions that people are making when they're doing an evaluation with Alex Freeland. I will be talking a little bit more about that later. Excited to be talking about that. History Man, thank you very much for joining us. Go Dodgers and God bless. God bless back to you as well, my friend. Gregory, heard we might be getting a new third baseman. It's great. That's a great point right there, Gregory. So that brings up some of the rumors that have swirled across the internet the past couple of days with two players that have been reported. I don't remember exactly who reported this. Of the Dodgers being potentially connected or interested in, and that is Nolan Arenado and Carlos Correa. I'm going to start with Nolan Arenado first because Gregory heard we might be getting a new third baseman. I won't spend a whole lot of time because I'm not buying too much into these rumors. With Nolan Arenado, he has been an incredible third baseman throughout his career. Dating back to his time in Colorado, now his time in St. Louis. He's been an incredible player for the Cardinals and for the Rockies. Borderline Hall of Fame player once his career is going to wrap up. I'm sure there will be some controversy about his time in Colorado, and it's dependent on what he does during the upcoming years. 3 more years of club control. I believe he's owed 32, 27, and 15 or something like that over the coming years, with Colorado paying about $10 million off of that. Still, with that salary, you'd have to be thinking about what type of money does it go against the luxury tax, which will be a certain steep price over there. Now, just a couple of things about Nolan Arenado that I think are obvious and apparent. Incredible defensive third baseman, or at least he has been a really good defensive third baseman throughout his career. Still an above average defensive third baseman, and I would anticipate him continuing to be like that over the next season or two, maybe going towards about league average towards the end of his career. He has been a really good third baseman throughout the course of his career. You got to give him props for what he was able to do. He also, on the offensive side, even though his power dipped during the past couple of seasons, still has been able to produce, albeit over the past couple of seasons has dipped more to being about a league average bat. I believe a WRC plus of 102 or something similar like that. He's a little bit more of the contact oriented, not going to draw as many walks, but he's also not going to strike out a whole lot type of third baseman. Really incredible talent, different type of player, pretty different type of player than what the Dodgers currently have at third base, which the Dodgers currently have a third baseman who is under contract for this upcoming season and has a team-friendly club option for the 2026 season, and that is Max Muncy. Max Muncy actually made some improvements defensively, was about league average on the defensive side, and when he was healthy, was on pace to having one of his better seasons of his career last year, was a 130-something WRC plus type of player. He was walking about as much as he had. He's about a 15% walk percentage. Strikeouts are a little bit high, but I think when we think higher, sometimes we think of 30, 32, 33%. He was about 26-ish percent, maybe close to 27-ish percent. Still high, still one of the higher percentages for this Dodgers team, but not too astronomical for him being able to produce on the power side of the bat. Now, when we were talking about Max Muncy, I'm taking into account the full regular season type of approach. He was a great player. When he was healthy, he was a great third baseman. And even if you look at some of the WAR metrics comparing Arenado to Muncy last season, Muncy even put up more WAR than Arenado, even though Arenado had the larger sample size than a Max Muncy. So, when we're talking about the Nolan Arenado versus Max Muncy, because believe me, when we're talking about this conversation, I don't think that there is any other math besides Nolan Arenado or Max Muncy. I do not believe that you have Max Muncy on this team to just be a bench bat, somebody who could come in and pinch hit. Although I think he would do well in that role, I don't think that is utilizing his skill set well, and I don't think you pay somebody as much as they are paying Max Muncy to just go out and do that. With Nolan Arenado, he would have an additional year of control. He would have 3 years, but he would cost significantly more to get a Nolan Arenado, and then it comes into question as far as what this does for the clubhouse. What does it do to get rid of a Max Muncy to say, hey, we like somebody better than you as opposed to a Nolan Arenado? I think that becomes a big, complicated factor. So then it's do you like a little bit better defense, a worse offense, or maybe somewhat comparable offense at the third base level, depending on the year Arenado has and Max Muncy has, which I say go look over the past couple of seasons. Max Muncy has been a better hitter than a Nolan Arenado, WRC plus wise. Two different type of hitters. Do you want the defensive-minded, the more contact-oriented type player, or would you rather have the guy who has been there quite a while, who is cheaper, who is not under more team control, but under a more team-friendly contract in Max Muncy? You have to make a comparison between those two, and it's not just a comparison of which is the type of player I would rather have. Okay, I can just make that switch really quick. There's a lot of different complicating factors, because going out and getting a Nolan Arenado, I think, limits a little bit what you might be able to do around the margins, being able to make other moves going forward. Yes, I know there's a lot of concern about what the Dodgers could do at third base going forward, but getting just one additional year of Nolan Arenado, I just don't see how that's worth it. I like the contract that Max Muncy is under, and I still like the type of player that Max Muncy is. If I had to decide whether I would like a Nolan Arenado type of player or a Max Muncy type of player, that's a different conversation. I just think there's a little bit too many complicating factors, and especially if you're going to get a Nolan Arenado, you likely have to give up some of your prospects, which could be a benefit because you're looking at it as we have too many of these prospects, we need to move some of them in order to make a move. I just don't see how this is of benefit to this Dodgers team right now. I think Max Muncy fills the type of role for this team. Nolan Arenado Great player. There's a lot of speculation with him, especially with his post on Instagram with what he was able to do. I just don't see it how it makes sense for this Dodgers team unless you move on from Max Muncy, in which case we've seen this Dodgers team. They have remained loyal to some of their players in their clubhouse, on their team, on their roster, even with some of the club options they gave out. Gave out a club option to an Austin Barnes because he was one of those guys who can fill in a role on this Dodgers team, yes, but he has been a Dodger, and the Dodgers want to be loyal to him as opposed to giving a fresh start to a Hunter Fiducia who might be a little bit younger with maybe a little bit more upside going forward, or giving a Dalton Rushing the immediate backup catcher. And then same thing with a Miguel Rojas. They decided to extend his club option as well. They have a history of rewarding the guys that have been in this system, that are part of their clubhouse, that are leaders as part of this Dodgers team. Max Muncy is a leader for this Dodgers team. I don't see them at this point. Things could change, but I don't see them moving on from Max Muncy right now. Nolan Arenado, great player. I just don't see how he fits on this Dodgers team because first base and designated hitter are not an option. Game is different. I don't think Max Muncy is moving over to second base. I would prefer, especially if Mookie Betts is moving into the infield, I would prefer if he takes the second base spot to prolong his career a little bit more. And then that gets into the question of Carlos Correa. I just don't see that happening right now. He fills in a void for this Dodgers team. He's shortstop. I would love to see the Dodgers get an additional shortstop to be able to help this team. I just can't see that happening right now. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time if I don't see that as a likely possibility for this Dodgers team. He was a great player last year, 150 WRC plus, and I love those type of players. I just don't. It is difficult to see the Dodgers actually making this move. Now, it makes a lot of sense for Minnesota and for St. Louis to be looking for different ways to be able to offload some of the guys that are under the bigger contracts on their team because they are players that have their teams that might be impacted more by some of the TV stuff that is going around with some of the networks, with Bally Sports being transitioned over, and then Major League Baseball taking over some of the rights. I don't know all the details of all that. That could be impacted by some of the teams and the decision making that they're going to be undertaking and wanting to offload some of these contracts. And here's the thing. And this goes back to our idea with Tommy Edman. I love that the Dodgers are looking for creative ways to be able to add talented players to this team. And I think this is something that you're going to see going forward, and I think the Dodgers are going to be creative with how they do. The Dodgers are in a great spot because of their TV deal, because of winning the World Series, because of bringing up this culture of winning, and because of everything that they have built. They have the ability to go out and say, hey, no idea or no talented player is really off the board for us. So let's go ahead and try to see what we can do creatively and just throw different ideas out there and try to find some of the better players. Even if they're under expensive contracts, we have the ability to be able to afford those type of expensive deals. I think they have the luxury because of the roster they currently have right now to build on top of that. And with the flexibility that they have, they can look for some of those, hey, what are some of the players that other organizations might not be wanting to pay some of those contracts? What would it take for us to take on those, since we're already over the biggest luxury tax right now, and be able to help our team better ourselves to win a World Series championship? I think that's the state of where this Dodgers team is at right now, while simultaneously looking to go ahead and add in a Teoscar Hernandez to the team, looking for ways to add in free agents. They're looking for other creative aspects, creative ways to go out there and add to this team. I think that's what the Dodgers are doing right now, and that's what I would encourage the Dodgers to do going forward, is find different ways and be creative of finding ways to upgrade this team. I think in this case, with both Nolan Arenado, I don't think it makes sense positionally wise, and I don't think it makes sense money wise, and potentially giving up prospects for a different type of player than a Max Muncy unless they were looking to completely change the philosophy of what they were trying to do and trying to completely avoid a lot of the strikeouts. And then it comes into a question of, do you go out and target a Teoscar Hernandez, or do you want to just limit some of the guys that have too many strikeouts out there? I just don't see that happening right now. I don't think that it fits in exactly with what the Dodgers are doing right now, so I don't see that happening. And then I just don't see Carlos Correa happening to the Dodgers. Fits in with what the Dodgers need positionally, and I'd be surprised if something changed. And he has been a really solid player. A lot of concerns health-wise, also a lot of concerns with what happened in 2017. Too many complicating factors for that for me as of right now. So, continuing on to the comment section, Justin Lamas, thank you very much for joining us. What's up? Back to yourself. Definitely pumped for the Michigan win this weekend in Columbus, aren't you? Go Blue. Works for both LA and Michigan. Definitely not an Ohio State fan. Can't say that I'm a University of Michigan fan as well myself. Grew up cheering on Michigan State, so there's a lot of bitterness right there. But I also know a lot of people that are big Michigan fans, and so great for them. Some of my best friends are Michigan fans, and they were super pumped about that. And I can't say I'm a big Ohio State fan, so pretty surprising to see that happen. Pretty cool as well. Justin Lamas, assuming they're all fit, how would you line up the top four in our rotation? Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, and Ohtani. That's a really good question, and it is a take your pick as far as what you want to do and how you want to go ahead and line them up. I don't think there's any wrong answer. Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, Ohtani. Honestly, I have no thought and no opinion as far as where you were going to go lining them up, especially if you're talking about those as far as our four that we're going to go into a postseason matchup. Then you can talk about, okay, what do we want to do and how do we want to mix up some of their lineups and stuff, especially throwing in the lefty Snell right there. Interesting conversation. I'm not exactly sure how I would line that up right now. I got to do a little more thinking on that. Anyways, greetings from France, mate. Almost midnight right there. Glad if this show was able to fit in a little bit with what you were able to do. Dodger Blue, thank you very much for joining us. Sammy Boy Smith, Correa has a no trade clause. You think he wants to come here? He already has 2 rings, so he's not desperate. Nor are we. I think it's Minnesota that is more desperate than Carlos Correa. I think that's where some of the rumors are. He doesn't have to be traded, though, at this point. Craig Osterberg, Lux position, as far as which position you think Gavin Lux is going to be this season, this becomes incredibly difficult because I believe it is in the best interest for the long-term health of Mookie Betts, which Mookie Betts is going to be on this team for the next 8 seasons. So you have to keep in mind what is in the best long-term interest of not just a star player, but a player that's going to be here for a long time. I think it is in the best interest for Mookie Betts, for him and his health, to probably play second base over the shortstop position. At least long-term, I think that's going to be what is best for Mookie Betts, which comes into question Gavin Lux. If that is the case, and if Mookie Betts is the everyday second baseman, which I think a lot of us are assuming is going to happen based off the comments of him moving back to the infield, there's not really a position for Gavin Lux, because I think Gavin Lux right now is a second baseman. You could try him again at the shortstop position if you want. I know a lot of Dodgers fans are not really enthused at that. You could also try Mookie Betts at the shortstop position, but you cannot have him play 162 games at the shortstop position. I think that's where a lot of it might be best for the Dodgers to trade a Gavin Lux. I think that's where a lot of that stems from. Not personally against a Gavin Lux, whose second half of the season was absolutely great, has fit into this clubhouse really well. I think the biggest thing is what is going to be the best long-term, keeping Mookie Betts as healthy and as productive as he can be for as long as he can be. With him being on this team and with him having a long-term contract going late into his 30s, maybe even to his 40s as well, you have to keep in mind that. And that's where, I don't know if there's a really good position right now for Gavin Lux. Gregory, what happens to Max Muncy? That's assuming if Nolan Arenado comes in, he doesn't really have a role. It's either a bench role or, I mean, you could technically try him at second base, although I don't think that would go over too incredibly well with where he is at right now. It would be you would find some sort of trade piece. Trade a Max Muncy. And I don't think that's what is going to happen. No, same Boy Smith. Max had plus 0.4 WAR more than Nolan, and he was injured. Another great point. I think right now Max Muncy is the more valuable player, or at least last year was the more valuable player than Nolan Arenado. Perhaps Arenado has more upside, but it's also getting later in his career, and that is a big, gutsy bet to make with Nolan Arenado, going him over a player that you already have in-house that has been better than him going forward. Delirium 9, many of these crazy rumors are wishful thinking by Dodgers haters. They're hoping we take on these contracts for players on the decline, shooting ourselves in the foot. That's a really good point. You cannot take on too many of these contracts. And that could be some of the things that is going on behind the scenes. People throwing around the Dodgers because of what they're able to do, hoping that they'll take on some additional contracts. These type of contracts do limit what you're able to do on the margins. And I want the Dodgers to be able to make the smart moves, the right moves. And if they love a player, to go out and target them, target the superstar type of players. But if they like them, or if they're not 100% confident and they don't have to make that bet, I don't want them to make that bet, because I want the Dodgers, as much as I want them to make the right moves, I also want the Dodgers to avoid the mistakes during this offseason, avoid the moves that could limit this team's ability to go out there and continually compete and be a perennial contender for the next decade plus. I think there are moves that can be made throughout this offseason. We don't know which of those moves that will be these types of deals, but there will be players on this free agent class that you will look back on in a couple years, 5 years, 6 years, however long, and say that was a mistake to sign that player. I want to make sure that the Dodgers avoid signing too many of those players, and none of those players, if at all possible. And trading for some of those guys would be another option that you could do. Kristen Navarro, thank you very much for joining us. What do you who do you think will lose in the Rule 5 draft? So the Rule 5 draft is coming up, I believe, on December 11th, sometime in that time frame. We're getting about 10 days away from the Rule 5 draft. I'm actually pretty excited about that. As far as players that were most likely to lose, again, remember there's typically anywhere between 10 to 15 players across Major League Baseball that get selected. I would be surprised if the Dodgers held on to Ryan Ward, honestly, with what he's been able to do and the power that he has. And having one of those corner outfielders added to your roster, added to your team, is something that I think a lot of organizations are going to value, and I think you could see that translated to the big league level immediately. I think he's one of the most likely player, if not the most likely player. Second most would probably be Austin Gauthier, which would suck for me because I want him to be a Los Angeles Dodger, and I think he can help on the margins. I just think with his positional versatility, with what he's able to provide all over the diamond, shortstop, second base, third base, corner outfield spots, you could find a place for him on the Major League roster. I think he's another one of those guys that is very likely to, or at least has as good of a shot as anybody to being selected from this Dodgers team. There's a lot of other names that you could go down that we could get into. I don't want to call out all of these different guys. I would say those would be probably the two that I will look at first. And then we'll see what exactly happens. I will say that I'm rooting for some of these guys. In fact, I'm rooting for most of these guys to be taken in the Rule 5 draft. Not because I don't want them to be Dodgers, but because I want them to be big leaguers. And very often the Rule 5 draft in this organization could be the only chance that you get at the big leagues. And so I'm rooting for these guys to get chances at the big leagues, whether they be the Dodgers or whether they be somewhere else. I'm excited for it. I'm hopeful for some of these guys. and excited to see what they're able to do. And if they stick around with the organization, I hope the organization does them right and gives them an opportunity at some point when warranted, or find some sort of trade piece for them in order to help get them to the big league level. Dan C., thank you very much for joining us. Hey, Dodgers Dogs, Muncy at third base, Adames at shortstop, Mookie at second, Freddie at first. Do it. I'm still a little bit back and forth on Willy Adames. I understand the need, understand the fit. Be interesting to see if the Dodgers go ahead and pull that trigger, if they love that type of player, or if it is just one of those things where they think Willy Adames is a really good player. But 6 years, they are not going to go into 6 years, which very likely, I compare this very similarly to the free agency, even though a little bit different type of players, but like a Dansby Swanson. Do you want to give that type of player a 7-year, close to $200 million contract, similar to what Dansby got? I don't remember exactly the terms of the deal, but it was a big deal for that type of shortstop. I think there's going to be somebody that's going to give Willy Adames that type of contract. Is that going to be the Dodgers? Is that going to be the question? Or do you have other options that you could turn to? Now, I think a lot of the narrative right now is that the Dodgers don't have anybody that they could turn to, or anybody that they really trust in, at least with other people in the organization. And I think there's some fair criticism of that. You talk about players that have come up and stuck at the big league level to the extent that other organizations have. Perhaps you look at some of the star players that have come up, like over the past couple of years, like Acuna, or different players throughout the game of baseball, young superstars, Correa, or a Jackson Merrill, or those types of players, young, talented players come up through the organization. There might be a criticism where you say, hey, why aren't the Dodgers bringing up more of those type of players? And there's different excuses that you can have. We've also gone in depth, and there's an episode that we did about 2 weeks ago where we addressed this type of concern, and we looked, and actually the Dodgers are really good at, particularly with players in their rookie season, despite not giving them a lot of plate appearances, still getting a lot of production out of those players. And that does not just include the 2016, 2015 rookie class. That also includes in recent seasons as well. Now, I think the assumption right now is there's not really a good answer long-term for this Dodgers team at the shortstop, at least in the near future, or a lot of people that might not believe in the player that we're going to be talking about, and that I'm going to be talking a little bit about in depth, not really looking at a lot of footage. I don't have any footage available, but what we're going to do is we're going to utilize Fangraphs. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of tools as far as looking into in depth at some of these types of players and talking about certain stretches, and perhaps seeing, hey, maybe this player is, or some of the things I thought about this player might not be what is actually true in reality, or might not be exactly what I was thinking about. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into Fangraphs. We're going to be looking at some of the numbers of Alex Freeland. We're going to be comparing him to, we're going to be looking at some of his 2024 season as far as the good stretches. We're talking about some of the bad stretches, talking about all of that in between. And then also addressing perhaps what is the biggest area of concern with an Alex Freeland, and talking about, okay, where does that compare to a lot of other people at his level within the organization, and then across organizations at the levels and at the places that he's played at. So give me just a second. We're going to go ahead and switch this over to some of these screens right here. We're going to go ahead switch this over to Fangraphs. My computer might be a little bit slow. It's running a whole lot of stuff right now. This is Fangraphs right here. If you are unfamiliar with this site, Fangraphs is one of the tools I utilize the most when I'm doing some evaluations with players. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down and see a little bit about his 2024 season overall, and then we'll be utilizing different tools. So last season, during the 2024 season, he had 3 different levels that he was at, which first off, we'll go ahead and go up here. Alex Freeland, 23-year-old shortstop, switch hitter. He is a shortstop player who has played almost exclusively shortstop throughout his minor league career. Despite the only rare exceptions that he's had is when he had to split time with other prospect Noah Miller within this organization, who is a defensive wizard at the shortstop position. Alex Freeland and Noah Miller at the beginning of the 2024 season split time at the shortstop position. So his numbers in 2024, and we're going to break this down by each level, and this is how Fangraphs has it listed right now. It has it listed by level, and we'll go through each one of these numbers. Starting off in 2024, he had perhaps the best stretch of baseball that I have seen at the Great Lakes level. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, I have the privilege of being around here, of Great Lakes, of seeing these players, of following along with this team on the road quite a bit. And it's wonderful that I get to do that, and I get to see some of these games and some of these stretches. Alex Freeland had one of the best stretches of baseball I've ever seen at the high level. During that month that he was there, 110 plate appearances in 23 games, a 216 WRC plus during that time period. He was walking at about a 24.5% clip, striking out only 14.5%. That is elite for what he is able to do. Hit 346, 518, 593 during that time. He was walking a ton, he was getting on base, and when he was making contact, he was hitting the gaps, he was hitting the ball really well. Only 2 home runs during this stretch, but he had 5 stolen bases. On top of that, batting average of balls in play was high, but he was able to do that and take the advantage of the most of what he was able to do. Now, this batting average on balls in play, the league average for batting average of balls in play is typically at around 300. There are some players that have higher because they are able to hit the ball a little bit harder, meaning the expected batting average is a little bit higher. But typically speaking, league average is about 300. And if you have a player that's well above 300, you would anticipate there being some regression. And there certainly was regression a little bit once he got to the AA level. 127 WRC plus during that time period, 13% walk percentage, 21 strikeout percentage. Then got promoted after 74 games to AAA Oklahoma City, meaning he's one stop away from the big league level. Had an 85 WRC plus during that month, a little bit over a month stretch that he had in Oklahoma City. Hit 243, 335, 396. Remember, Oklahoma City, incredibly hitter-friendly environment, so he was about 15% below league average during that time if you take into account the entire time period of his time there. Now, what I want to do, and we're going to utilize this tool really quick, is we're actually going to look at the game logs, and we're going to be finding some of the best stretches of Alex Freeland and what he was able to do, as well as some of the worst stretches, and we're going to be utilizing Fangraphs as a tool. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to utilize this game log right here, and this is really cool because it allows you to see the results by each individual game right here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to not use this standard format. Standard just gives you all the raw numbers. We're going to use the advanced, and those are the numbers that I actually like. That's going to give us the WRC plus. So you can see the combined numbers from his time in Great Lakes and his time in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. 132 WRC plus, was walking at almost a 15% clip, striking out at about a 21% clip. 260, 387, 442. A lot of really good numbers, stuff that you're going to really like if you're a baseball fan. So what we're going to do is you can see this is WRC plus. These are individual stats per game that he has right there. And what you would notice if you go ahead and look at the game logs that he had for about the first month, you're seeing some ridiculous numbers right here. So I'm going to show you, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at his numbers, and we'll go ahead and include his numbers through about June 1st or so. So we'll look at from the start of the season until June 1st, which takes care of most of his beginning of the season, all of his time in Great Lakes, and about the first month or so during his time in Tulsa. So this is a good 2-month stretch that Alex Freeland was able to have. We'll see if it actually is able to update. There it goes. During that 2-month stretch that he had, and this is some of the best of Alex Freeland, not just in Great Lakes, but also at Tulsa. This is some of the upside that he has. 202 WRC plus, 331, 389, 574, with walking at almost a 20% clip and striking out less than 15%. If he is anywhere close to this type of player, which defensively, he is defensively sound at the shortstop position, switch hitter. Also during this time period, at 1.3 weighted stolen base, he was able to steal bases, and not just steal a couple of bases and some caught stealing, steal bases effectively. If you add on all of these different totals, you get an incredible player. Now, where are some of the negativity coming from Alex Freeland? I think it's coming particularly from his stretch, and we're going to look at a 2-month stretch from about July 2nd to about the first week of September. Now, this is the 2-month stretch. This is where Alex Freeland started to go down a little bit as far as some of his numbers. Perhaps it's some of the dog days of summer. Perhaps it's some of the swing and miss. You saw some of the swing and miss, or at least the strikeout numbers, jump up a little bit. And so what I'm giving you is both the upside with Alex Freeland as well as where the downside was for him. So with that, during this time, had a 73 WRC plus from July until about the beginning of September, hit 213, 313, 315 slugging, with his strikeout percentage at about a 28.5% clip. This was probably the worst output that he had during the course of the season, which takes into account the end of his time in Tulsa and the beginning of his time in Oklahoma City. Some of those dog days of summer that come through the course of that. But then something happened, and this is something that I was intriguing that you might not have caught if you just look at the overall game numbers, is his last couple of weeks that he had, his last 2 weeks that he had in Oklahoma City. He might have started to turn around, and perhaps there is reason to be excited about what he's able to do going forward, because the last 2 weeks of the season, you saw a 162 WRC plus. You saw the strikeouts really start to dip down again at about a 17% clip. Walk percentage at about 13%, which is something that you're going to see consistently with Alex Freeland. He draws a lot of walks. That is something that the Dodgers absolutely love. 333, 434, 622 slugging. He was able to really come around a little bit more at the end, which perhaps this is being a little bit too picky. Perhaps this is just looking for some sort of good stretch at the end, and it's not taking into account the whole sample size. I think it still shows something for Alex Freeland, especially as he's starting to see more advanced pitching, that he's able to turn around and come around and be something that is good. So what you see throughout the course of the season, he was able to put up some really good numbers. But it's even more than that. A statistic that I often use when talking and evaluating about pitchers has to do with their ability to get swings and misses. Now with Alex Freeland, and I think this is something that we talk about quite a bit, with him and this is the concern that a lot of people have about him coming up, is he able to make consistent contact? You saw during that stretch when he struggled, his strikeout percentage jumped up quite a bit to the upper 20s, close to about 30%. If it's at that, he's not going to be as productive as a hitter. If it's down closer to about 20% or even below during the best stretches of Alex Freeland, he's an incredibly productive hitter. What I want to see is, for him, is there a ton of swing and miss or an unavoidable amount of swing and miss in his approach? And that brings up a statistic that I use quite a bit, swinging strike percentage. Now, this is something cool that is actually found on these pages right here, is you have the ability to see other type of statistics down a little bit below. And it's okay not to understand all of these numbers. What we're going to do is we're going to look at these numbers right here, and we're going to look at particularly this number. This number I've referenced quite a bit, particularly when talking about pitching. It takes the number of swings and misses divided by the number of pitches. Not the number of swings, the number of pitches. Now, I just want to first off say at the top of this, might not be the most fair comparison for Alex Freeland, and particularly for hitters, because there are certain players that don't swing as much as other hitters. For example, with the 2023 Great Lakes Loons team, and with players like Dalton Rushing and Taylor Young, and a lot of that crop, including in Alex Freeland, they take a little bit more of a patient approach of the plate, meaning they're looking to see quite a bit of pitches, which means that they might be seeing more pitches than others that might be driving down the swinging strike percentage a little bit lower. And so I would love to see a statistic out there that looks at and is able to make comparison that is easily accessible on Fangraphs, which there are some other these statistics right here that are not as easily accessible to make comparison to other players as swinging strike percentages right here. I want to see that on a per swing basis. Don't get the luxury of that right now. I know that it is available, but what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the best of what we have right now and look at his 2024 season based off of swinging strike percentage and make that comparison to the Dodgers organization and to other leagues to see if there is truly a worrying sign for Alex Freeland and his swinging strike percentage, or perhaps that might be overblown just a little bit. Not to say it's not a concern, but might be overblown a little bit. So 2024, you can see his time in Great Lakes, time in Tulsa, and his time in Oklahoma City. You're seeing swinging strike percentage and Great Lakes of 5.3%, 8.7, and 7.9, meaning that if you take his time in Great Lakes, 5.3% of pitches that he saw resulted in him swinging and missing. Now, that is a cool number to have, but that doesn't mean anything unless you understand the context. So what I've done is I've created, and we're going to go over to this tab right here. Basically, what I've done is I'm looking at all batters within the Dodgers organization that had at least 250 plate appearances, want to get at least a healthy amount of plate appearances that are within this Dodgers organization, and I want to see where that swinging strike percentage falls. So with right here, this is the page that will typically come up. You want to go to batted balls right here, and then you're going to go to swinging strike percentage, and we're going to look right here. 4 players with at least 250 plate appearances, their swinging strike percentage as a hitter, Alex Freeland had the second lowest, and that is only behind a Zaire Hope. His overall swinging strike percentage on the season was 7.9. That does take into account his first month in Great Lakes when he was unbelievable, but that also takes into account the other stretches, that 2-month stretches where he had a 28% strikeout percentage. The swinging strike percentage was the second lowest throughout the Dodgers organization, what they're able to do, behind Zaire Hope, which I'm excited to see Zaire Hope during the 2025 season. Perhaps there is not as much swing and miss in Alex Freeland as a lot of people are concerned with. There still should be some worrying concerns, but when you look at that in comparison to a lot of other players, even that make a lot of great contact, like in Austin Gauthier or T.Y. Taylor Young or Noah Miller or Yainer Fernandez, he was still able to make contact more consistently than a lot of those players, which means that there's a lot of excitement about an Alex Freeland. Now, what I want to do is I don't want to just compare that to players within the Dodgers organization, because you want to actually compare that to players across his level as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at all organizations, and then we're going to look at particularly the league that he was in last year, the Texas League. This is the league that the Tulsa Drillers are a part of. We're going to compare him to the players that were playing at a similar environment as him. Again, we're going to let's look at 250 plate appearances. Again, I believe Alex Freeland had about 300 or so plate appearances in Tulsa. We can actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and dip this down to about 200. Let's add a little bit more to this sample size right here. You can see all of these different players. What we're going to do is we're going to look at swinging strike percentage, and we're going to see where Alex Freeland is able to fit on this category right here. That is opposite way of what I want. So we'll look at it for players with 200 plate appearances. Again, this is out of 114 different results. Alex Freeland's swinging strike percentage at the AA level was about 8.7%. That is 19th out of 114. 19th out of 114 different players at that level. Still really solid for an Alex Freeland, and there's maybe not as much, when comparing players at the AA level, as much swing and miss as there might have been or even might have thought of. And you can compare that even with different strikeout percentages. Still going to be a little bit on the higher side for an Alex Freeland, but even with that, still ranked 42 out of 114, a little bit more closer to the middle of the pack. Still room to grow for him right there, but on a per pitch basis, maybe not a swing and miss or as extreme as anticipated. And then again, looking at the Pacific Coast League level, which this is the AAA level, we're going to shrink this down to 150 plate appearances. And again, looking at the swinging strike percentage for Alex Freeland, if we go ahead and look at that, 30th out of 151 at a 7.9%. So this is hopefully a tool that you guys can use. Part of the reason why I showed this is to show you guys an additional tool that you guys can use to evaluate these players, because don't just take my evaluation, don't just take Casey's evaluation, go out and do your own research as far as looking at these players and doing your own evaluation for them based off how good they are. Part of the reason why I went through this exercise is to show you this tool. But it also goes to show you that there's a lot of skill set with an Alex Freeland and what he is able to provide at the shortstop position. Some of the numbers I didn't show you is he stole 30 bases last year. On top of what he's able to do, on top of being a switch hitter, on top of being really good defensively and filling in a hole. He is a guy that is on the rise in this system, and there is very few people within this organization that grew as a player as much as he did during the 2024 season. Now, this is not, and throughout this entire exercise was not a way to say, hey, only rely on Alex Freeland, don't worry or don't look for different avenues to add a shortstop to this roster. Just go ahead and start an Alex Freeland. It's not to say that conclusively, because I think there are still concerns with an Alex Freeland. It is to show you that the Dodgers have options of what they are able to do. And perhaps some of the concerns with an Alex Freeland are a little bit overstated, and I think he might be undervalued by a lot of Dodgers fans as far as being an option at the shortstop position. I think he has an insane amount of talent, and I think he can showcase that, and I think he can turn that around, and especially if he's able to make that consistent contact, which if you look at some of the numbers, he's able to do actually at a pretty solid level. If he's able to maintain that, I think he can be somebody that can be a incredibly valuable piece for this Dodgers team going forward. I'm excited about his future, and if the Dodgers don't get a shortstop, that is okay. They have Tommy Edman to cover there. They have Miguel Rojas. They have a Mookie Betts in an emergency situation. They could have, especially if they resign a Kike Hernandez, they could play him at the shortstop position if needed to make room to be able to get an Alex Freeland up to the big league level at some point in 2025 if they believe in him that much, which there is reason to believe in the talent of Alex Freeland. There's reason to be excited about the 2022 third round pick. He's a really good player, and I wanted to go through this exercise to again show, hey, maybe there might be something a little bit deeper than the overall initial numbers. always look a little bit deeper to see if there's something incredibly valuable, some incredibly valuable insight that you can have. The more that you know about these players, the more knowledge that you have, the better decisions that you have the ability to make. And now the Dodgers don't have to make the move. They don't have to sign Willy Adames to 6 years, 7 years, 8 years if they don't want to or if they don't love that type of player. They have other options. They have optionality, and I think that is great for this Dodgers team. And I think the Dodgers desperately need to have that optionality. I'm excited about the future of these players, and I'm excited about being able to highlight a lot of these guys at the minor league level. We'll go back to the comment section right now to see just a little bit more insight, answer a few more questions. I got to get out of here in about 10-ish minutes or so. So we'll be here until then. Let's see. Young Yi, thank you very much for joining us. Do you think the Dodgers will try Lux at shortstop during spring training if he is not traded by then? I think that very likely would be the case. I think he would probably be traded. Probably that would be at least the first aspect. If he is not, I think you could see him getting some looks at the shortstop position because they got to try something with him. If Mookie Betts is the planned second baseman, if both of them are on the roster and Mookie Betts truly is an infielder, one of Mookie Betts and Gavin Lux is going to get looks at the shortstop position. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So that's what I would anticipate. Delirium, I wouldn't mind a combination of Edman, Rojas, and Lux at shortstop till we find a long-term solution. Lux potential needs to be showcased before we consider trading him for presumptively an equal value return. Yeah, that could be something that the Dodgers look into. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the shortstop position going forward with a Gavin Lux. Let's see. Going forward, Al Minerva, LA has 37 spots, so only 3 left. I'd sign Ha-Seong Kim to play shortstop, trade Lux and prospects for Devin Williams, bring back Teo and Treinen, that's your 40. Kershaw, Kike, and Roki after expands to the 60 players. That's a really good. I think you're very much online with what Casey has been preaching quite a bit, and I'm very much on the same. If Ha-Seong Kim is an option, which I know he's going to be out for a part of the 2025 season, but I think he, because of the positions that he plays, provides a lot of the similar value to a Tommy Edman, meaning he plays some of the premium positions defensively, is able to still produce at about a league average rate on the offensive side. I think those type of players are rare, so when you have the ability to go after and get that type of player, I think you go out and get him, and I think you can cover the shortstop position until he is healthy, until he is ready to go, and then you have a whole lot of options. And even with an Alex Freeland, I think there could still find a way to be able to fit him onto this roster, to have him come up, because Miguel Rojas is not going to be here forever, and you don't necessarily have to start once it goes into the 2026 season. If you sign Ha-Seong Kim to a 2-year deal, you don't necessarily have to start him. You could fit him in, positionally versatile, in a wide variety of different roles. So I love Ha-Seong Kim. As far as Lux being on this roster, I'm kind of on the same page with probably trading him just because I want Mookie Betts to be healthy for the long term. As far as the other options, Teo, absolutely. Treinen, I'm on board with. Trading for a Devin Williams, I'm still waiting to see for this Dodgers team. I'm not 100% there quite yet. This could become a hesitation on my part to go ahead and give out a lot of your resources, a lot of your prospects for relief pitchers. I have a hesitation to doing that just because you can find relief pitchers fairly cheap, and I wanted to go get more of the premium positions otherwise. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not fully convinced on that. So we'll go ahead and get into a couple of other comments before we log off tonight. Varius Lux is a second baseman. Tommy may be the shortstop. Let's see, going forward, who is more important, Edman or Teo? Teo's incredibly important, incredibly valuable. I love that the Dodgers locked up Tommy Edman. I think they can do both. And I think with the Dodgers doing both would be something that's really good for this team. Justin Lamas, the problem with Lux is he's locked at only one position. Yes, that is true. And the position Mookie wants to play long term. Also, Lux doesn't play against left-handed pitching. I think that is the biggest thing with a Gavin Lux is he seems to be locked into the second base position, and why there's talk about trading him. Same Boy Smith, Willie Adames contract will age like glass of milk. I see a Dansby Swanson decline. Cubs are already regretting signing him. He's untradeable. And that is the thing that you want to try to avoid in this Dodgers team. Yes, we want to build a dynasty. Part of building the dynasty is not tripping over yourself with unnecessary moves. With the addition of Tommy Edman, they have the luxury of making moves and finding players that they desperately want, that they think are going to help this team both now and in the long term. Guys that fit into this culture. Guys that go ahead and are going to be productive going forward into the future. They have to go ahead and target those guys, or they don't necessarily have to. And with Willie Adames, there certainly is some worrying signs defensively with some of the defensive metrics going down a little bit. You could say that's just a 1 year and that will improve. There really aren't a whole lot of 30-plus-year-old shortstops that continue to maintain great defense combined with really good offense. And if he has to move off the shortstop position and play third base, then you're in trouble with the level of production that Willie Adames will have going forward, or at least you could foresee there being potential trouble after years 2 to 3 into years 4 through 6, 4 through 7. I think that is a really good point by Sammy Boy Smith. BC Lux will retire a Dodger. It'd be interesting to see how they make that fit with Gavin Lux. Either Mookie Betts would have to play shortstop or he would have to stay into the outfield, which could still be options. The Dodgers don't have to play Mookie Betts at second base. I am for whatever keeps Mookie Betts the healthiest, the longest that he can be. Because he's a star player and the Dodgers are going to have him for a very long time. And he's got to be on the team healthy for a long run. They are committed to him for that. They are not committed to a Gavin Lux, and they could move off for him. Gavin Lux is a great player. I love having him be a part of this Dodgers team. He also has to fit onto this roster, and you build around your star players, and then you add from there. And if with Mookie Betts, if he moves to the second base position, it is hard to see how Gavin Lux fits as part of this team. That is what I'm seeing right now. Doesn't mean that they couldn't try him at the shortstop position or try him other places. They also do have options with him, minor league options, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Showtime LA is talking about Carlos Correa, has 5 outs above average and a 155 WRC+. He's elite. As a talent, as a baseball player, he's a really great baseball player when he's on the field. I just don't see that move happening with this Dodgers team, with what had happened to this Dodgers team. That could just be my initial indication. I'm going to give this probably a little bit more time of thought. I just don't see the move happening. Just my personal opinion, and I don't think they necessarily have to make that move, especially with the contract that he has and with some of the risks, not just with the on-field stuff, but with the off-field stuff. Dodgers have a great culture right now. They don't necessarily have to go ahead and make that move. But that's going to about do it here tonight on Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Different show time tonight. We're going to test it out, see how it goes. There's some other shows going on tonight. I know a lot of you guys are big fans of some of the other shows and stuff. I encourage you guys to keep watching those shows and keep tuning back into Dodgers Daily. We're excited to be part of the journey, part of the baseball journey with you guys, presenting a lot of coverage to the minor league level. Also want to give a shout out, forgot to do this at the beginning of the show. If you're anywhere near Michigan or are interested in Great Lakes Loon stuff, today only, or this is the last day of the deal, best deal of the year, perhaps, or at least an incredible deal for tickets. You can get 10 vouchers right now for like 30% off, from like $170 to about $110 for a voucher pack, which is for 10 games, which is a really good deal. Highly recommend you take advantage of that by the end of the day. I actually got I've got a couple more packages on top of my 10 game plan that I have for some other people that will be coming to some of these games, which is really good. Also, if you're not in the Michigan area, go check out the Loon store to be able to buy some merch that is on cheap right now. Not paid advertising, just because I love the organization. That's just a shout out to you guys. What I do here and what we're able to do here at Dodgers Daily is because of you guys. So I, again, want to thank you guys for tuning in and being part of this journey. We'll continue to have conversations. I know for Showtime LA, we'll have more conversations. We'll get into it with Casey on the show, probably on Wednesday or one of these times, with some of the rumors, with a Carlos Correa. We'll be talking a little bit more, talking back and forth, maybe play a little bit of devil's advocate with each other. And we value each one of you guys' opinion. If you're a fan of certain moves or want certain things to happen, because you are part of this journey and your opinion is incredibly valued, and we want what is best for the Dodgers, and we want them to continue to win World Series championships. How that is going to happen, the Dodgers are in a great spot. They can make a lot of different moves, and I think that is what is exciting about the offseason and exciting about this time for Dodgers baseball. We've had one parade. I want parades, plural. I want to continue to have a successful organization now and the long term. How that has happened is a mystery, but the Dodgers, if anyone can do it, they have the ability to do it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Dodgers Dogs. There will be another player interview tomorrow. Highly recommend go check out the one that was released earlier today from Evan Shaw, prospect within this Dodgers organization. Many more to come of those in the upcoming days, so go ahead and check that out. I know Casey premieres those, and he interacts with you during his lunchtime. Go ahead and interact with Casey then. Until next time, though, thank you for tuning in. Go Dodgers.